Pay close attention. The news you are about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. Well, of course, we're going to be talking a little bit in the news today about something that's shaking the earth, not in the typical areas, but this time over in the Big Apple, right? And people from 10 states actually felt those tremors from the epicenter. We'll talk a little bit about that. The bird flu, that's still in the news right now, affecting a lot of animals. And Iran planning for a little bit of revenge with the ongoing conflict over there with Israel being involved and kind of creating a lot of enemies as this war goes on. But first, a deadly police shooting in Chicago. Well, images show a driver that was pulled over for a mere seatbelt violation. While being pulled over, he shot at an officer, wounding him. In response, officers on scene opened fire, firing 96 shots in 41 seconds, killing the driver, 26-year-old Dexter Reed. After repeated commands prior to the shooting, officers called for Reed to open the door so that he could exit the vehicle, but of course he ignored those commands. As a result, he opened fire, striking one of the officers in the wrist.
Well, 4 officers discharged 96 rounds in 41 seconds towards the vehicle Reed was occupying. Now, Reed got out of the SUV, fell to the ground, and it appeared that he was shot multiple times afterwards. Now, Brandon Johnson said regarding the incident at a press conference, quote, "Shooting a police officer can never be condoned. We hold our police to the highest of standards."
Well, at the time, Reed was facing charges for allegedly carrying a gun into a street festival. His mother was very distraught over his death, saying at a press conference repeatedly, "They killed him, they killed him." A gun was recovered from the front seat of Reed's vehicle, and the officers involved in the shooting are, of course, on administrative leave, pending an independent investigation.
Sad situation. It didn't really have to end that way.
No, it didn't.
Well, people from 10 states felt the shaking of the earth in a recent 4.8 earthquake whose epicenter was 45 miles west of New York City. Now, no reports of injuries or major damages, which in these days is definitely some great news.
Yes, because we've definitely over the years been seeing an increase in natural disasters with earthquakes, flooding, droughts, and deadly storms that have been taking place all over pretty much every continent. Well, remember we brought to you information on food waste? Well, we have a few more interesting facts on just how much of that food is wasted. Well, according to the United Nations, people throw away enough food to give people around the world facing hunger more than one meal a day.
Wow. Well, more than 1 billion metric tons were wasted in 2022, according to the United Nations Environmental Program. Now, how much is that, you might ask? Well, it equates to nearly a fifth of all food produced across the globe at an economic loss of over $1 trillion.
Wow. Well, it also amounts to over 174 pounds of food per person per year. The amount of food that's disposed of in landfills produces enough greenhouse gases that if it were a country with those production numbers, it would rank third in size only after the United States and China.
Wow, staggering statistics actually regarding food waste. Well, in economic news, Wall Street closed in the red after news of a spike in inflation. Now, what does that mean for consumers? Well, take a look at this next video from CBS Evening News Money Watch for more on this growing problem. Take a look.
Now to some breaking news. Wall Street took a hit, with all 3 major indexes finishing the day in the red. The Dow fell more than 400 points after the Labor Department reported a higher than expected spike in inflation. The Consumer Price Index for March rose at an annual rate of 3.5%, and that is the biggest jump in 6 months.
For the third straight month, prices have gone up more than expected, from the rising cost of car insurance and repairs to how much you're paying at the grocery store every week.
Do you know how much one of these costs? $2 freaking.
This was $200.
We supposed to skip the power bill this month so we can buy groceries, or the mortgage?
Before the pandemic, all of these groceries, about 30 items, cost $100 on average. Now, 5 years later, according to Nielsen IQ, all this costs 33% more, meaning you'd have to skip about 10 items like chicken, bread, milk, and bananas to make your $100 budget. 5 years ago versus today, the difference is remarkable. Is that normal?
Oh, goodness, it's not normal at all. So that's why consumers are really scrutinizing their behaviors because, prices are leveling off, but they're leveling off at these record high levels.
Higher gas prices and rent also helped push inflation up 3.5% over the last year. Also more expensive, baby food and formula spiking nearly 10%, elder care up over 14%, and veterinary care jumping almost 10%. President Biden responding today.
We're better situated than we were when we took office, where inflation was skyrocketing, and we have a plan to deal with it.
But until then, shoppers continue to cut corners where they can.
We asked Americans, have you changed your behavior? And 87% of Americans have said yes to that. We may be seeing more, white meat on the barbecue than red meat this summer because beef prices have gone up 9%. Everybody's been impacted by this. There's no way you can get around it. Everybody's been impacted by this. There's no way you can get around it.
Well, when it comes to the economy, everybody definitely feels the pinch of inflation, especially when it comes to just the basics, food, clothing, and shelter.
Right, and going up 33% like that, that's a big deal for somebody who is on a pretty tight budget.
That's right. Well, we're going to turn it over to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, who has some interesting news for us on bird flu, the need for cleaner water, and Iran attacking Israel, their plans to do so. Larry, what do you have for us?
How we live from day to day affects the planet and everything on it and within it. And wherever there is a breakdown, be it social or ecological, it is exactly that lesson that we are learning. An excellent case in point is one of the latest alerts released by the CDC concerning bird flu after a man in Texas tested positive for the virus that authorities believe he contracted through cattle. Officials are saying that it is the first recorded instance of the avian virus being detected in cattle, though it has now been identified in livestock spanning 6 states since Roman March. That number moves to 8 for the amount of states where birds have been affected, with the result that some major producers are once more calling their flocks. Officials say there is minimal known risk for human-to-human transmission of the affliction, but the virus is mutating, and so they are alerting the public as a means of staying ahead of things. The problems are not just with the things we eat, but also with what we are drinking. The EPA has recently made the unprecedented move of announcing that forever chemicals, which are known to cause problems for human health, must be removed from the nation's water supply. The announcement also came with new regulations that will mandate the municipalities eliminate 6 different chemicals that are currently pervasive in the U.S. water supply. At this point, nearly all Americans are thought to have some amounts of the carcinogenic chemicals circulating in their systems. All radars are up in the West amid strong beliefs that Iran is preparing a retaliatory strike against the system following the bombing of its embassy in Damascus by Israel. It is believed that Persia is preparing a large-scale missile attack, and so Tel Aviv is now rushing to ready its air defenses. The attack on the Iranian embassy is reported to have taken out several key military figures. The U.S. has stated that it was unaware of Israel's intentions, but with understandable incredulity, Tehran said it intends to hold both Israel and America accountable. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Katan, these are the type of situations that everybody was concerned about taking place and turning the small conflict into a much larger regional conflict. Right. So continuing along these lines here of what's going on between Israel and Iran, just how upset is Iran about this strike on their consulate in Syria? Well, the supreme leader has released a statement through the Iranian state media vowing, quote, The evil regime of Israel will be punished by the hands of our brave men. We will make them regret this crime and similar ones, God willing. Now, while Israel did not confirm or deny responsibility for the attacks, there is little doubt that they are the perpetrators. Just a week earlier, Israel carried out airstrikes on Aleppo and Damascus, killing about 53 people. And in January, Israel also targeted Damascus, killing 5 senior Iranian officials.
That's right. Well, there are a lot of questions being raised by the situation. First off, why are Iranian officers in Syria? Well, Syria says they are advising on how to fight the rebels there. Secondly, what prompted this outright attack on the Iranian government? Well, it's no secret Israel has accused Tehran of building what has been referred to as an axis of evil, and Israel believes they use Syria to support anti-Israel groups such as Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel accuses Iran of channeling money and weapons through Syria to these groups. Thus, another possible reason for the attack.
Well, but no matter what the reason, this last strike was stepping into new territory for Israel, hitting a foreign embassy and also killing top Iranian generals. Now, everyone is wondering, why would the Prime Minister of Israel make such a risky move that could escalate everything? Well, some speculation is that Israel had knowledge of an attack Iran was planning to carry out, so they wanted to try to sabotage those plans. Or it could be just to test the Iranian government, which takes a very hard line verbally against Israel. Now, this might be to see if Iran itself would become involved in the fighting, or is it content to let its proxies manage the fight?
One more hypothesis of why Israel could have done this would be to bring the American government into the war. Recently, we have mentioned President Joe Biden has been less supportive of Netanyahu's war in Gaza. There has even been pressure to cut off military aid. But if it came to war directly with Iran, it would force the U.S. to help its ally Israel with continued aid. Most agencies have already blamed Israel for the strike on the Iranian consulate. However, the White House secretary refused to confirm the reports and accusations.
Well, whatever the reasons, now the world is waiting and watching to see how Iran will respond. Now, President Joe Biden is weighing in on the situation and warning Iran with one solitary word: don't. Well, regardless of any warning, U.S. officials are saying it is possible the retaliation could be extreme and could include more than 100 drones, over 150 cruise missiles, and possibly even ballistic missiles.
Wow. Well, the promise to carry out a retaliatory strike is due to Iran's officials reporting the deaths of 13 people, including 2 senior officers. A spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Force said they are not only on the defense right now, but also prepared to go on the offense, saying, quote, "We are prepared to strike with a variety of capabilities."
Well, a U.S. Army commander from the Pentagon flew to Israel to meet with military officials there, and President Biden declared the United States' support for Israel with the Iranian threat looming. He stated, "We are devoted to the defense of Israel. We will support Israel. We will help defend Israel, and Iran will not succeed." Now, the U.S. State Department has put out a warning to American diplomats that they not travel outside of Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, and the United Kingdom has taken a more urgent stance, advising their diplomats to get out of Israel while they can.
Well, many fear that a tit-for-tat could bring on an even larger conflict in the Middle East, one that will involve not only the U.S., but others that support Iran as well. General Frank McKenzie, former head of Central Command, shared his thoughts with CBS Evening News, saying, quote, "If there's a significant mass casualty event inside Israel, then I think the possibility of escalation is very, very high."
Well, lastly, the ongoing conflict with Russia and Ukraine. Now, Russia is increasing its missile strikes on Ukraine's energy sites, damaging parts of Kiev's largest power plant, along with other power plants across the country. Now, the Ukrainian president is, of course, growing very desperate in his calls for more aid from the international communities, including, of course, from the U.S.
You'd be thinking after being this far in the game that they wouldn't be looking for military aid, but peace aid. Let's get some negotiators, mediators in there to sit down and discuss the problem and work towards an actual solution that would be beneficial to all parties involved.
Right, and Ketan, that's a great point, but like you said, not too many people look for a solution. They're only looking at who's going to support us, who's going to send more military equipment, aid, and so forth in this area so we can continue to fight. But it is a great point, but not many people will seek a peaceful solution.
That's right.
Well, if you want to learn more about these stories, contact the House of Yahweh. When you do, don't forget to request your copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call the House of Yahweh at 1-800-613-9494. You can visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, and Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And of course, don't forget the Yisrael Says and Ask Israel programs available for you to aid you in your study and understanding of the scriptures and prophecies. You can find those programs by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Ketan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.